And in this session, we're going to look at some of the differences that there are between some of the labels that we can constantly hear bandied around. So things like learning disability, mental health, personality disorder. Sometimes people can look and they can see somebody that doesn't quite fit, and they can kind of like put them into all three in a way. They're just a bit strange, they're just a bit odd, they're different. But actually, those are three completely different areas, and the way we respond to them needs to be different as well as a result. So let's look at learning disabilities. Who would leave their phone on while we were doing a talk? Huh? Just the senior pastor. Learning disabilities. I've got notes for you, so don't worry about taking notes. So you've got some handouts afterwards. I didn't give them to you first, otherwise you'd just read it all, and then I'd be useless, be surplus to requirements. So, learning disabilities. Learning disabilities is nearly always diagnosed in childhood. There are some learning disabilities that are picked up quite easily at birth because they have a physiological, biological need. So if you look at Down syndrome, for example, is a chromosome abnormality. There are physical features that would indicate that person has Down syndrome. And learning disabilities is an aspect of that, as is things like often impaired hearing, heart problems, loose muscle tone, and learning disabilities is an aspect of another condition. And there are lots of conditions like that, like Prader-Willi syndrome and all kinds of conditions. So there's that type of learning disability that is almost a secondary thing to a condition. There's a learning disability that is by far the most common, that is called a non-specific learning disability. And this disability, there's no apparent reason why, and it's usually picked up during the first years of childhood and perhaps certainly when they get to school, because the normal stages of development don't get reached. So they don't pick up concepts as clearly as everybody else. They're not at the same place in their education. And that's a non-specific learning disability. Sometimes learning disabilities occur through a lack of oxygen during birth. So there's all different kind of causes, and it's a lifetime condition. Okay, there's no recovery. If you've got a learning disability, you've got a learning disability. And how that is measured is by IQ. So if you have an IQ lower than 70, you're considered to have a learning disability. But there are bands of that. So if you've got an IQ between 55 and 70, that's considered to be a mild learning disability. A moderate learning disability would be between 40 and 55. A severe learning disability is 20 to 40, and a profound learning disability is 10 to 25. So you can see that there are measurable things with learning disabilities that can form a diagnosis. And it causes a lot of problems for people. You know, people with learning disabilities are 2.5 times more likely to experience health problems. Some of this is because the learning disability has come with a part of another condition. Like we were saying about Down syndrome, often at times there's a heart problem or a hearing problem, muscle tone problem. So sometimes it's that. But here's the thing that I think is really shocking, is that they are 4 times more likely to die from preventable diseases. These aren't things that can be treated and part secondary. They're just something that we can treat and prevent. And people with learning disabilities are 4 times more likely to die from them. They are 58 more times likely to die before the age of 50. So it sucks, really, that that's the world we're in. I mean, these are preventable. Some of that is that they are afraid to go for checkups, because oftentimes that's a challenging environment to go into. And we can look at some of the other reasons as we go on during the day. But they also result in significant, so we've got significant impairment in IQ and in thinking skills. Okay, so they have a significant impairment in being able to have adaptive and social functioning. So, for example, okay, you probably experience this lots of times. You'll be mid-conversation, it's probably me actually, but hold that thought. You'll be mid-conversation, someone will come up to you, got bad news. Or, I'm going out later. Not, hello, sorry to interrupt. You know, I'm sorry if you were engaged in another conversation. They would just come up, not be aware of that social functioning that's happening around, not be able to adapt to it, not be able to say, I recognise this isn't the time or place. They would just go for it. Like I say, oh dear, that does sound like me, but anyway. And they have significant problems with self-care and with independence. Now, this is just my personal view, okay? I am sometimes dismayed at the people that we have in our community that we are coping with that actually don't have adequate care provision. And they are struggling. And anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole because that could go a long, long time. But they have significant problems with that, how to function independently. And so they've got this set of problems. Now, as we welcome them in our community, how do we respond to that in a way that crosses that bridge, really, for them to help them engage properly? Because, you know, we have to acknowledge that the reality is that they have an IQ of less than 70. So, you know, some of the thinking is going to need to be framed in a different way for them to understand some of our communication. So, for example, somebody with a learning disability takes 20 times, a repetition, 20 times to actually get a concept. So when we've got somebody in our congregation that we said, I've told you not to go near that, and I've told you, how many times have I told you? Well, maybe you've only told them 18 times, you know, and they need another 2. So we need to understand the patience that is required. They're not being difficult, often, sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not being difficult. It just takes that constant reinforcing to learn. Please don't use jargon because they won't get it, or irony or sarcasm, because that just is going to not work. Talk slowly, don't go because they won't be able to cognitively be able to process that. So talk slowly and in a calm, even tone, and smile. You know, that's kind of a common way of communicating, isn't it? That actually, come on, you know, I want to engage with you. Ask a person to repeat what they think you've said, because sometimes when people are in that situation and they are feeling quite overwhelmed, and they're out of their depth, they're struggling, and you'll say, did you get that? What I've just, yeah. And we see this a lot. Yeah. So what do you think the next thing I've just asked you to do is? I don't know. So don't just assume because they've said yes, they've understood what you've said. Ask them to say, what do you understand by that? Tell me what you think I've just said. So just make sure that you're getting that message across in that way. Check the environment around them. This sounds quite a small thing, but actually some people with learning disabilities are very sensitive to light, very sensitive to temperature. So we have a guy in performing arts that's with us that he doesn't know when to take his jumper off, and he overheats. And when he overheats, he gets emotionally very anxious. And so we have to say to him, let's take your jumper off. Why don't you take your jumper off? You're looking a bit hot there. Think maybe you're getting a bit, oh, yeah, I'll take my jumper off. And you take them, because they don't always have that adaptive social functioning to think, why am I feeling like this? I'm getting hot, take my jumper off. So just watch for some of those sort of environmental clues that are going on around. Does that make sense? Yeah? So these are quite kind of simple things, really, but they're not to be underestimated in terms of how people with learning disabilities can then feel understood, communicated with, how we can build friendships that are genuine and real because we are both on the same page. We're both interacting at the same, we're both hearing and understanding the same things. So that's learning disabilities. Then we have mental health. Now, mental health does not mean to say, necessarily, that can occasionally, but does not mean to say people have a low IQ. It's nothing to do with IQ. It's not measured by IQ. It is not IQ related. So somebody that has mental health problems can have a phenomenally high IQ. They can be extremely intelligent, and to talk to them as if they're not it can be very insulting. And it can be diagnosed anytime. It's usually during teenage or adult mental health issues start to arise. But one of the big differences, it's not a disability in the sense that a learning disability is a lifetime thing that, we're not going to recover. A mental health condition can be either managed with medication and therapies, or you can recover from it. So you can have an episode of depression, say, have the right treatment, and you can recover from that. And so it's not a disability in the same way that a learning disability is. Now, under mental health, there are all kinds of things like bipolar, schizophrenia, and all those kind of things. But actually, autism comes under mental health, not learning disabilities. And I shall explain why. Let's move this flip chart over because, thank you, Ollie. Autism is assessed, and this has been sort of quite recently, I guess, last sort of 20 years or so, it's been understood more and more that people that are autistic do not have what is known as a theory of mind. Okay, now this can also be the case for somebody that is extremely emotionally distressed or off their heads with something. They can lose what we call a theory of mind. And this is what it is. This is how autism is defined, really, continually. So it was first found out by something called the Sally Ann experiment. And this was done because there were two people that they were using. One was Sally, one was Anne. And somebody that was observing something that was going on, okay? So the person that you imagine that you're being assessed to see if you're autistic. So you're watching what's going on here. So here's a table, table 1. Here's another table. And on table 1, there's a box. I can draw better than this, honestly, I can. On table 2, there's a basket. Okay. So in comes Sally, the first person, and she's got a ball in her hand. Actually, let's make that a different colour. There we go. Is that okay, that mic? Yeah? She's got a ball in her hand, and she goes into the room, and she puts her ball in the basket. Okay? She decides, I need the loo or something, and off she goes. She's outside the room. In comes Anne. She comes into the room. So here's Anne. And she comes into the room, and she takes that ball out of that basket, and she puts it in the box. Don't know why I've tried different colours. I think I'm making it far more confusing for myself. She puts that ball there, okay? Now, Sally comes back in the room, and the person that is being assessed for autism here is asked, where do you think Sally is going to look for that ball? Now, somebody that does not have a theory of mind will say Sally will look for the ball in the box because they cannot do what is called, what is it called? Just, what's it called? Basically, they can't put themselves in someone else's shoes. So what they know they think everybody knows. What somebody that does have a proper theory of mind will know, yes, but Sally hasn't seen that Anne has since come into the room and moved the ball. So when Sally comes in the room, Sally will think the ball is where she's left it because she hasn't seen all this. So they cannot attribute to other people facts and feelings that they don't have. They just can't transfer that. Does that make sense? Now, this, if you asked a 3-year-old would say the same as somebody that doesn't have a theory of mind would say. They can't transfer their knowledge to someone else. So if they know it's there, they think everybody knows it's there. Somebody, by the age of 5 and 6, the theory of mind starts to develop, and they can attribute feelings and thoughts to someone else that are different from their own. But they can't do that before they're younger than that. And somebody that's autistic can't do that either. If they know something, a piece of information, they can't assimilate that somebody else, what's gone on here, that doesn't know it. They assume everybody knows it because they know it. And that's one of the major differences. That's really why autism is under mental health as well, because you can still have a really high IQ with autism, but if you lack this, it's quite a disability. I don't like using that word, but it is. I mean, so we attribute facts and feelings to people all the time. It's the way we operate. So maybe we say, oh, well, Neil's going out, he's taking his umbrella with him. Oh, Neil must think, therefore, that it's going to rain. Doesn't look like it's going to rain to me. I don't think it's going to rain, but Neil thinks it's going to rain because he's got his umbrella. So we look at people's actions and what they're doing, and we attribute to those actions and how they communicate our interpretation of that. But we know that Neil might have a different thought to me. Does that make sense? Yeah? So somebody that is autistic, if you're trying to say, but just see it, look, they're just not going to. They're going to see what they see as what you know. And we see this. There's somebody on our enablement program that cannot or finds it very difficult to attribute feelings that are different from hers to someone else. So, for example, if one of our team is off sick, she'll say something like, well, I don't see why they should be off sick. I had a cold and I was in. Why is that they're off sick? That's not right. They shouldn't do that. And she can't get that concept that other people think differently, feel differently, react differently to a situation that she is assessed is the same as her own. And it is a real disability. But also, as I say, somebody that is highly emotionally dysregulated, so maybe they suffered a bereavement and they are really in a it's a highly emotional state. It's not often, not common, but they lose this capacity as well in those moments. So that's where autism fits in, and why that's different from the other types of mental health, because it's all to do with lacking that theory of mind. Are we okay? Yeah. So we've got learning disabilities, we've got mental health. Let's just look a little bit about, we'll look at quite a lot actually, about personality disorders, because they are something that is separate to those two categories. There is a debate about whether personality disorders are classified as mental health or not, but they're generally not. People don't treat personality disorders as mental health. So, but they are people that often cause a great disruption with people around them. They're people that in communities can take up an awful lot of time and energy. The previous police chief I was talking to estimated, in her opinion, that 40% of people that are in our judicial system actually have personality disorders. The difficulty with a personality disorder is there is no real way of treating it. There are therapies that you can do that actually help, have shown to help, but you can't medicate personality disorder. So before we get into all of that completely, let's look at what a personality disorder is. Well, a personality disorder is highlighted and seen by the way in which people interact in their relational world, interact with people around them. So they don't interact in ways that we would consider to be normal, for want of a better word. And this is because people with personality disorders underneath have an extreme fear of abandonment and an extreme fear of rejection. They often have, as a result, unstable relationships. They find maintaining a relationship near on impossible. They have a clear and unstable self-image, and this is something James has talked about, identity. Somebody with a personality disorder really struggles with a sense of identity, in that they have no idea really who they are. This can self-harm. They can have extreme emotional swings. They can have chronic feelings of emptiness, explosive anger, and sometimes if they are under extreme stress, they can feel suspicious or out of touch with reality. So, it's kind of, it sucks to be somebody with a personality disorder. And it's actually a very challenging condition to accommodate as a community, because of all of the different aspects to that, the different outworkings of it, it can be really challenging for us. They expect you to reject them. So they're expecting that. So they're push and push and push and push, and it becomes a self-fulfilling thing because they get the very thing that they're so scared of. They can do something that's called splitting. So they can put you on a pedestal 1 minute, and people are either all good or they're all bad. But that can change within the course of, maybe you've been 10 minutes late to meet them, and you've gone from being all good to all bad. And there's these extreme emotional responses. So it's very difficult for us to feel, well, actually, come on, it's only 10 minutes. But for them, it's keying into all this sense of abandonment and rejection, and they can't cope with it. So someone once described somebody with a personality disorder as somebody, if you imagine a burns victim, the pain of that, the sensitivity of skin, that's how they feel emotionally, and any touch, any emotional interaction like that is extremely painful. They are extremely sensitive to, thoughts and feelings and responses from other people. But there are 10 types of personality disorder, and we haven't got time to go through in depth all this, but just so as you know, there are 10 kind of types. Psychologists are looking at that, changing that. However, at the moment, there's 10 types. And they're kind of clustered together in 3 different categories. The first category is characterized by eccentric thoughts and behaviors. So, maybe you're in a conversation with somebody, and we have several people like that. We know, Bev, don't we? That suddenly the conversation starts to get, that's a bit odd. We're suddenly talking about something that's completely fanciful and out there. And those are people that have paranoid, schizoid, or schizotypical personality types. Then we have cluster B, which is kind of far more what we encounter in many ways, is people that it's characterized by dramatic emotional thoughts and erratic actions and behaviors. So these are people that have borderline personality disorder. It's not borderline and it's only just. It's borderline because there's such a borderline of emotional dysregulation. Narcissistic, histrionic, antisocial. That's cluster B. Cluster C are personality disorders that are based in fear. So these are avoidant. They might be avoidant of things, have high anxiety, become dependent, obsessive. These are all those types of personality disorders. We're going to focus mainly, I think, on the borderline personality disorder that that shares all those characteristics that I spoke about earlier. You know, the fear of abandonment, unstable relationships, unclear or unstable self-image, extreme emotional swings. That can be really confusing for us. So we're literally, within a sentence, you can go from somebody that is really happy and engaged to something triggers that thought, and the swing is extreme, and you get this outburst of anger. And it's the extreme nature of it that can be scary for us. It's not so much that we can't cope with the outburst of anger, it's the change that happens. And that can take you off guard a bit if you're not used to it. And it can make you feel that actually, goodness, I need to step right back from this person, which is exactly what they fear most. So how do we deal with that? Well, I think part of it for us is to understand what's going on there. So somebody that presents with, in those moments of anger and that real high intensity of feeling that you get, and it can be really off-putting, is there are some ways that we can actually work with that person or help that person to come back to more of an even keel. So let me just share what often happens out there in the world, is this person will have an extreme response to something. It could be the slightest thing. Could be that, say, you're 10 minutes late for coffee. You know, it could be anything. Could be that somebody did talk to them on the bus that they didn't think was very nice, the way they said something. It could be anything. It could be that they didn't get a sausage that they ordered at McDonald's. And they have this extreme response. Then people outside think, oh, God, I don't know what to do with this. This person's really angry and aggressive. And what are the worst two words you could ever use to people that are in that situation of high emotion? What would you hate to be told to you most of all in the world? Calm down. But it's kind of a natural thing that we kind of say, isn't it? When somebody's like, calm down. You just almost do it without thinking. What would that do for somebody that, any of us that are in that high emotional state? Yes, it raises the stakes. It takes it up that next level. So often when people are like that, they will then start swearing. They get very aggressive. And the worst thing we can do is match our tone with theirs or try and go over the top of them. So, for example, the more louder they're shouting, people tend to think, well, I'm going to shout louder. I'm going to get control of this situation. I'm going to bring it. You know, what we need to do is not match our tone with their tone. We come underneath. So what we do is we validate the feeling, because this feeling is very, very real to them. We might think, well, they've just not got a sausage at McDonald's, and it can be something as simple as that. But for them, in that moment, it feels like the end of the world, okay? Don't underestimate that. Don't start thinking and minimising it. Oh, it's only a sausage, you can get a sausage. They feel it's the end of the world. So that feeling is very intense. So what that needs to be done is to be validated. So what we need to do, first of all, is to say, I hear you're upset. So you're validating that feeling. Never mind the language and abuse that's being thrown at you. Come on, guys, we've got to get less precious about this. You know, what happens often in a lot of professional services even is that somebody will go in and they'll be effing and blinding, using awful language, and somebody says, don't talk to me like that. Don't swear at me like that. Thinking, come on, get over ourselves. You know, we can address that later on because that isn't appropriate. However, in that moment, that person has not got control. You know, they've not got control to, oh, I'm very sorry. I shall remember that in future. They've not got control. So put that aside. We'll deal with that later. I can hear you're upset. Would you like to talk to me about it? So suddenly, oh, okay, you're really interested and that you care. Your feelings have been validated. Because the other thing to remember is when somebody's in extreme distress, their body takes over this sort of freeze, flight, flop, or flip, or flap, or whatever it is. But it takes over those, and all the cognitive, all your blood, all the physical responses are going to get you out of that situation, going to help you cope. So cognitively, you have not got the same resources. This happens to all of us when we're really emotionally distressed. So you haven't got the emotional resources, the cognitive resources to always cope with that. So when somebody tries to reason you out of that, when you're up here and tries to give you a good reason why you shouldn't be up here, that's just going to make it worse. So come underneath, calm, even tone, not patronising. Oh, I can hear you're upset. Do you want to, no, because that might just make it 10 times worse. Check the environment around. So this person's in this highly emotional state, okay? Is there something in this environment? Is it too noisy? Is it crowded? Is it bright? Lights are often very, very, that's why in the cabin we have like a dimmer lighter, and upstairs it's a bright light. It can affect mood very much, lighting. Is there something in this environment that is making this person not be able to feel comfortable? So, well, would you like perhaps to go and sit over there where it's quieter, maybe? Oh, yeah, that would be great. I'll go and do that. So you're beginning to bring them down. And so what often happens is then, as that starts to come down, they start to be able to regain the physical control. The blood starts going where it should start going. I mean, this isn't simple. However, it starts to diffuse the situation in a way that starting to say, don't swear at me, you can come back when you're talking in a different tone. I mean, you can come back when you're using different words to that. Where does that get you? What you can do later on is to help them in the future when they're calm. Say, do you know, in future, if you were to approach that slightly differently, you might get a different result from other people. But realise what they're feeling is raw, it's real, it's intense. Don't minimise it. And don't try and say, oh, well, never mind. I'm sure it's not that bad, really. It's real to them. So that's kind of how you would see them interact. Now, why? Why does personality disorder happen? There's a lot of unknown about this still, but there's actually no proven genetic link to it. All the research at the moment points to it being environmental, so it being about your upbringing, it being about what you've experienced in the early years. So up until, Freud was the first came onto the psychology scene that really did us a great service when he said about how our subconscious can affect our conscious. And he was kind of like the first psychologist really that kind of really made those links. So what's going on subconsciously can affect us consciously. So that was a great thing he brought to us. Not so much that he thought women that suffered from hysteria were really envious of men's penises. That's what he thought. He thought all women had a penis envy. I don't want to rock your boat, guys, but seriously, we don't. So he did that. Now, then in the 50s and 60s, it started to, and Freud felt that babies basically would go, young children would go where the food was. They didn't need that emotional attachment. What they needed was to be fed. And they could receive that from anybody, anywhere, and it wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference. That's all they needed, and that's the term cupboard love. So we get that, don't we? So later on in the 50s, the 60s, work began to develop about what is the value, what's the importance of emotional attachment in relationships? Is there a value in emotional attachment? Is that part of what's needed to produce healthy people? And some research was done about looking at people that had come back from war experiences and looking at the effect of that, but also looking at young lads that had gone in and entered the judicial system really early and looked at their past, and every single one of the people they looked at, they discovered had really maladaptive thinking, functioning because of their past. So, sorry, I'm trying to whiz through this sort of story in psychology, but so we're up to the 50s and 60s. Then this guy, Maslow, came in and he developed what is called, what he calls a hierarchy of needs. And this is where the link between this and personality disorders come in. Okay, so people that have personality disorders, it is shown, research has shown that they have been either have trauma, abuse, abandonment, neglect, extreme deprivation. They come from very, very dysfunctional backgrounds, and there's something about that changes as the brain develops a particular function of the brain. In the front part of your brain is where it contains all your impulse control and your emotional responses. So when you have been damaged through those things, through sexual abuse, through trauma, through that, your brain, that part of your brain, does not develop in the same way. And that's where all your impulse control is. So you can see how hard it is for someone with a personality disorder to say, calm down. That's better, thank you. So Maslow produced what he saw as, he called it self-actualization, and what it means to be healed and whole and functioning as we're designed to function. Okay, has people seen this before? Are you familiar with this? Yeah. So we'll just whiz through it then, because, I don't want to take too much time on it. But what he identified with is that the people that had personality disorders had not had these basic needs met. Okay. And he called them deficiency needs. And we need to remember that, because they are deficient. People are deficient in their development if they have not had some base needs met. Now, here, if you look at this, sorry. Okay, that's better. So look at the top, first of all, self-actualization. What does that mean? What that means is Maslow believed that we were all born for a unique purpose, and that we'd all got a purpose to fulfill. We believe that. And he believed that until we had actually connected with that purpose, started doing that purpose, and used that for the benefit of others, or a higher being, as he called it, we would never reach what we were meant to be. We call it being the best version of yourself at Treasure Seekers. This is esteem needs. This is where we can look at, yes, we've identified maybe who we're meant to be. We're getting training, we're developing, we're growing, we're getting feelings of accomplishment. The difference between this and this is that we're not actually using it to benefit anybody else or use it as a higher good. Does that make sense? And then this is being able to have good, healthy relationships with each other and be connected. Now, down here, this safety needs, the bottom one here, let's start from the bottom one first. Physiological needs, obvious really, food, water, warmth, rest. And then you get to safety needs, security and safety. Now, this isn't about, is the door locked? This is about emotional security and safety. What does it mean to feel, I feel safe inside my own home? And children that are suffering from trauma, abuse, and neglect, how can they feel safe? They have not got that safe environment where they can feel that in their own home. So they grow up having missed, deficient in that need. And often people with a personality disorder will say, I feel like I've got a big hole inside me. I'm empty inside, that it needs filling. And so there starts off with here. So they go on to life here, and they've got basically no foundations, because this is what it is. This, if you imagine, is the building that you're building up there. These are the foundations. People with personality disorders do not have the foundations in their life. So we can come up here and we can start saying, well, let's teach you let's go on a course and we can teach you how to learn this, this, and this. Of course we want to have a relationship with you. But they can't hold that because they've got no foundations. So it's like pouring water into a colander. you pour it in, as soon as you pour it in, it leaks because there's nothing to hold it with. So, or like building a building, you put the first few bricks up and you think, hey ho, we're going great guns. And then it falls over because there's no foundations in those people's lives. So the problem is they grow up there and they get into a community and people have a wrong expectation of them. So there's a kind of unwritten rule that we have between us, kind of in relationships. I do this for you, you do this for me, I do this for you, you do this for me, and we kind of operate in that one. Then we think, well, this is a real friendship. It's given and it's coming and all of that. So, but people with personality disorders, they come into a relationship like that, and people will think, right, okay, I can see you're damaged, I can see you're hurting, not necessarily what it is. I'm going to try and fix you, because that's what we do. We're going to love you into being better. We're going to fix you with the best will in the world, with the best intentions in the world. And you'll start to pour in all this stuff, and maybe you'll see some results. Then all of a sudden, maybe that splitting will occur, where suddenly you're the bad guy. Suddenly they will push over all the bricks that you feel you've built up together and feel like it's being thrown back in your face, okay? Because they don't have those foundations. And what we do with our enablement team, and where the difference is that we start off the process with somebody with a personality disorder, and this is what we all need to get our heads around, is that we wouldn't say to somebody who is visually impaired, after everything I've done for you and you still can't see, would we? We'd say, we accept that you're visually impaired. So we accept there are obstacles in your path that somebody who isn't visually impaired doesn't have. So our role, and we'll look at this a bit later, as a community and as a church, is to help those people negotiate those obstacles. And some of those we've looked at. So emotional instability. How do we help someone gain some regulation of their emotions? How do we help them learn to live with that? Because they have a personality disorder does not mean to say that God has not given them a plan and a purpose for life and a unique role to fulfill. They've got a destiny to fulfill, and we've got to help them get there. But we're not going to do it by thinking, well, everything you've done for me, and you're still behaving like that. We've got to manage our expectations. And with personality disorders, I think there are two key things that we need to go into it with. Firstly, have the right expectation. Because somebody with a personality disorder, particularly the cluster B group, will self-sabotage. It's part of the nature of it. So you will think, this is fantastic what we've built. And they'll come over together, and all of a sudden, they'll knock it down flat. And you'll think, and it's very hard work. It really is. But that's part of all of the other stuff that's driving them, that real fear of abandonment. So have the right expectations, have appropriate boundaries. It's loving, but with a way of knowing that you're not going to fix. You're not there to fix them. They are going to have difficulties in relationships, and you can't afford to get hurt every time you're suddenly the bad person, not the good person. So they're coming into the world with, can you imagine what torment it must be to be living like that, with every minute of the day having all those conflicting emotions going on, never sure 1 minute to the next who is really there for you and who isn't, no sense of security. And so they've grown up with, as I say, in situations where this has been lacking. Now, what we need to do then is to start changing the way that we view that, because these people are broken, they're not bad. Okay. They do things that are difficult to understand, things that are incredibly frustrating, but they're very, very broken people. And can we make a real difference to that? Well, yes, we really can, but it's going to take us being committed to saying, right, we are going to manage our expectations, we're going to set boundaries that are right, and we are going to stick with this. We're going to stay with this because they've experienced one rejection after another after another. Rose will be able to tell you a lot about this. We've set up in Treasure Seekers what we call our enablement team. And our enablement team has 4 people in it. It's currently now getting another 2, and it's growing all the time. And it was commissioned by the CCG, and it's looking at people that have the highest intensity users. So these are people that are either been the highest intensity users of police or A&E services or all of the statutory services. And they're people that slip through the net of all the other services. And they're people that, like I say, have personality disorders often, and they come. And our role is basically to try and build up some of these base needs and to help them with targeted skill-based development. Now, what that means is trying to find something in them that's hook, because people that are in this position have no sense of who they are. They've got that identity is just completely not there. So when we find a little hook, when we find a little gem, or maybe they like doing that particular craft project, right, we've got something to work with. What we're doing is building them a life and something to lose that actually challenges the negative behaviour. If you talk to any of those people, they would probably say, if you carry on like that to start with, you'll end up in prison. Well, good. At least I get fed. At least I get a warm roof over my... They've got nothing to lose when they're in that state. So we start building them alive and building these foundations, building them something that balances out this over and gives them the incentive to learn how to negotiate those obstacles. Does that make sense? Yeah? And it's really, really demanding work, really challenging, because Rose is amazing how she does this all the time. But Rose has the most awful abuse hurled at her after having had a most amazing day with somebody. They suddenly tell her the most dreadful things. But, you know, it's not personal from that sense. It really isn't, and it's out of extreme damage. Now, this is all kind of, when you think Maslow started in the 50s, 60s, then on top of that came a guy called Harlow. Is this okay? We're keeping up. A guy called Harlow, who developed on the basis of that something he called attachment theory. And what he was looking at, and we're going to look at that this afternoon, he looked at the need for a child to be securely attached. So it's kind of like all around this, but he blew apart Freud's theory of cupboard love and brought in this thing of knowing that a child needs more than food to sustain it. And it needs to be securely attached. And if it's not securely attached, it will develop in a way that isn't growing in the way that it was intended to grow. This afternoon, we're going to look at 2 really powerful videos. And I just want to warn you, they are quite emotional. And they look at attachment, the value of attachment, and they look at what it feels like not to have some of these base needs met. And then we're going to look at what are we going to do about it as a church? What can we do? How can we think a little bit differently, maybe, understand the complexity of the people we've got coming in. So we've got learning disabilities, we've got people with mental health, and we've got people with personality disorders. How are we going to build an environment that is home to them? Because that is what they most need. And this is like, for them, this is what they're seeking all the time, is that will somebody fill that hole inside of me? Will somebody actually be there and stay there for me? You know, the amount of rejection these people have is heartbreaking. And the stories that when I go into the police, Tanya comes with me for a certain session, and she tells her story of her interaction previously with the police, because we're talking all about how to de-escalate situations. And she's given me permission to share her story beforehand. I'm not sharing it today, so I haven't asked her permission, but suddenly you stop seeing the offences and you start seeing the person. And that's kind of the biggest thing that we can give as a community, is we remember they are not broken, they're not bad, they're broken. Underneath all of this chaos that surrounds them, because it does, when you've got somebody with a personality disorder, chaos is all around them, is a very broken person that does not have a lot of these foundational needs met. Okay, so we're going to look at that this afternoon, which I'm really very excited about, because it sort of makes it real, doesn't it? Is that okay? I've realised it's a kind of whistle-stop tour, really, through all of the subjects of mental health, learning disabilities, and psychological development. But are there any questions?